it is now time for us to take a look at some of the basic or fundamental items or commands that you're going to need to manipulate your way through a Linux system in order to make use of it in a pen testing situation, of course. Now, what we have brought up, what you're looking at is the login screen for Backtrack. I have Backtrack 3 here. I did do some updates to it in July. This is the one that I would normally have for all the students to make use of. It has VMware tools installed and many of the other items updated. It has a mealworm unzipped and ready to roll for us. Now I want you to notice here that I'm moving my mouse around, and now I'm going to click inside here. My mouse goes away. Okay, now I'm in the system. I can't get back out unless I do the Control-Alt. Why? Because it is a command line version only right now. I don't have the actual X Windows up and running. I do not have the normal KDE desktop up and running. So what we're getting at here is that, again, you have to remember that when you're in some of these screens, you cannot get out unless you do the Control-Alt and then the mouse comes back to you. So the login for this is simply root, R-O-O-T, and the password is Tor, T-O-O-R. So now I'm logged in, and then I do my start X, and that's going to start my KDE. It's going to start my desktop environment. Now that it's booted up and ready to roll, we are logged in and ready to go with the desktop environment. Now, as you can see, you look around, it looks very similar. We do have a system icon up here, which will bring us in so we can take a look at the system. You notice I'm clicking through. I can take a look at just about anything that I want. Here's my root folder. Now I can look at all the different folders that are there. Where's my temp? There we go. So there's my temp folder. I can go in. You notice I'm just one clicking, which you can set up for a Windows system as well. Here's my zip file. Notice it already showed me what's inside that zip file. It's a simple GUI interface similar to what you would think of. We do have Firefox installed on this thing. Great, huh? And here's our console. We'll go ahead and take a look at that here shortly. And here's my K menu. Click on my K menu. And then here's where you find everything that you need. Here's your terminal sessions. Now, I could start a shell from here. Oh, my really cool Midnight Commander. Woohoo! Just kidding. I'm just messing around a little bit here. As you can see, it's a simple point and click as far as getting everything up and running in most settings. Here's or in most situations. Here's some settings here. System administrator, sound and multimedia. Here's where you go to make all of your necessary changes. Here's my internet and network, my web browser, my connection preferences, my Samba wireless network. Here's your utilities. Here's our editors. We're going to make use of Leo later on. Here's kwrite, kedit. Okay. Here's Backtrack. Underneath Backtrack is where you find all of the penetration testing tools that are built into this. Here's our information gathering. Go to all. As you can see, there's a lot of tools in there. Will we use every tool in here? No, we will not. Actually, we will use a few of them, but not that many. We want you to get good at certain tools, and then we will move you on and let you play around with some of the other ones. Here's our network mapping. Okay, you notice that some of them are similar or the same as what you had seen before, but others are new. Here's your vulnerability identification. Look at this. The Cisco Global Exploiter, the Cisco Config Security Audit Tool. Here's another auditing tool, ISO 7 Decrypt, Cisco OCS Mask Scanner, Cisco Torch. That is a very good tool for fingerprinting the Cisco devices. Very good tool. As you can see, there is a ton of tools built into Backtrack. Now what I did here is I clicked down here at this Konquer, and I started Konquer up. This is set up so you can conquer your desktop. It's very similar to what you would think of in Windows Explorer. I'm going to click on Home Folder, and here is my /root. I'm going to back up here to the /. And now we see that there are many folders here. Allows us to kind of go through and take a look what's there. Here's our temp folder. There's some tools that, well, some items that I utilized before. As you can see, I do make use of this quite often. Now, these are all folders that are pre-installed and set up with Backtrack. We have our bin folder. This is where a lot of the items are located for the system itself, so it knows what it's doing. Here's your devices. So if I were to bring in a USB device, it would be listed here. Now I want you to understand that Linux treats, so we'll talk about this later on, but Linux treats all devices as files and folders for the most part. So you'll see that they're listed in here as a file rather than a device like you might be used to in a Windows environment. Here's the user-based information under USR. You can come in here and take a look to see what. I clicked on one that didn't have anything in it. Okay, so here's your last log. I can double click on this and we can bring up the log file. It's going to bring that up in KWrite. There was nothing on it. There was nothing recorded. Why? Because I do not have logging enabled. And I single clicked on it to begin with and it brought it up, and I was too lazy or not patient enough to wait. So there you go. KWrite's just like a normal note text writer. Now, in a pen testing point of view, you're going to need a few additional items. And we're going to be spending a lot of time in a shell. So what I did here is I just opened the console. This is your shell. And this little baby is something you need to get used to doing. I'm going to do a simple command. We're going to do an ls. And here is all the items in the folder that I'm currently in. Do an ls-l. And now it lists all of those same items, but it lists them with the rights that we have associated with it. We have the first one here tells us if it's a directory or file. So this one's a directory. This is a file. And then the next three have to do with the owner. So in this one here, this desktop folder, it's read, write, and execute. All right, so that's what the owner has. This is the owner group, so the owner group can do nothing. And this is the everyone group, so we can read and we can execute, but everyone cannot write. So you notice here that it's different with this little Kismet file. We have a read and write, but no execute. We have a read and we have a read. So you can kind of understand how that is laid out and how that functions. Let's look at a few other commands that you will make use of. One of the items that you need to keep in mind is that you and I both need to make sure that we have IP addresses. So how do we look at an IP address? In Windows, we know that we can do that with an IP config. Here, we're going to do an IF config. I'm going to hit enter. So now it brought up ETH0. I want you to remember that in the Unix world, everything starts with 0. So ETH0, which is my Ethernet port, we see that I have an IP address of 192.168.1.8. Here's our broadcast. Here's our network mask. Nice, huh? LO is a local loopback. Okay, that's your local loopback adapter, 127.0.0.1, which you would expect. We don't have any other devices or any other Ethernet cards set up here. Now, there's other commands. You can do an ifconfig-a. Of course, that's going to give us what we want. We can do an ifconfig, and we can just do the ETH0, so we only see that one item and nothing else. Now, what are you going to do about the name server? The name server is actually stored in a file called resolve.conf. Now, I'm going to use a simple text editing program called Nano, N-A-N-O, and I'm going to open that, and that's stored in the /etc/resolve. Now, being remote, you wouldn't have been able to see that, but what I did is I just typed the first few letters and I hit tab. In the Linux realm, you can tab to finish off what's there, so you don't have to type everything out. It really saves time. I also want you to remember that Linux is case sensitive. If it's a capital letter, you have to use a capital letter. If it's a small letter, you have to use a small letter. So I tabbed it out here and finished this off, so we're going to do a nano slash. That means that we're starting in the root directory, and underneath the root directory is etc, because we're currently not in the etc folder. So nano slash etc slash resolve.conf. I hit enter, and now it opens the resolve.conf. So my name server is 192.168.1.1. This is where all of that is stored. I can make changes to that, and I can use a different name server, and away we go. Notice down here, we see the Control X for exit, Control G to get help, write out. In other words, if you want to write to it after you make some changes. So if I hit if I come over here, hit return, type something in. I always forget that I need to actually move my letter, move it down in order to make that happen. So I can make changes to it, whatever I want. Then I would write that out and have it saved for the to the actual file itself. We're going to do a Control X and exit that out. Do you want to save modified buffering? No, I do not. So I hit N, and now we're back to what we were just looking at. So now, how do you assign your own IP addresses? This thing's set up with DHCP. Now, in order to do the DHCP cd is the command. Now, this should come back and give me an error stating that it's already running, because it is. I already have an IP address. But if you did not have one and DHCP was installed on the system, then you could just type DHCP cd and you would get an IP address from the system or from the network. Now, how do you do a static one? Pretty simple. You do an ifconfig ETH0 then you put in the IP address you want. Now, I'm putting in a /24 rather than going through and typing out a subnet mask. /24 gives us the 255.255.255.0 mask, and I would simply hit enter. And now we'll go back and do the ifconfig. Now I'm using an up arrow to get to where I need to be. I can use the up and down to run commands that I have already ran before. Saves me some additional time. So I'm going to hit enter, and here is the ETH0. You see that the IP address has changed to a .99. I showed you where the name server was stored, and I showed you how to nano to that particular file, the resolve.conf. What if we don't want to open the file? We just want to see our route. You can simply type the command called route, hit enter, and it's going to give that to us. Tell us what's going on. So here we are, 192.168.1.0. You notice here that we don't have much for gateway. Why is that? Because I just changed my IP address. Now what happens if, will this work? No, it's already running. See, it doesn't understand. I've already had an IP address. Why did it not work? Because it already knows that it's up and running and I have an IP address that will function. Let's just see if I got any internet access, shall we? I'll pull up Firefox. Now remember, we are inside a VM and I have limited memory on here, so it's a little bit slower than you might think of. I'm just going to click on the Metasploit. Oh, see, it's unable to connect. Why is that? Because of the fact that I need to go back and make sure that my name server is set up appropriately for this particular IP address. I shoved in an IP address